She was a young, innocent maid, marked by the silence of a mother who died too soon. He was a cold millionaire, with eyes full of memories no one dared to touch. When their paths crossed, a desire was born, as intense as it was dangerous. If you love stories of love and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. Let's continue. If this story has interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The wind cut like a knife through the cobblestone streets of Silverleaf Summit. April Moon tightened the shawl around her shoulders as she climbed the service stairs of the Silver Peak Lodge, carrying the heavy bucket of cleaning supplies. Her hands, reddened by the cold and constant work, trembled slightly. It was 6 in the morning, and the mining town still slept under the thick fog that descended from the mountains. April was 23 years old, but her eyes held a premature age, as if they had seen more than any young soul should witness. She grew up within these very corridors, where her mother, Remedies Moon, worked as a chambermaid for 15 years. Remedies taught her from a young age the value of going unnoticed, of moving like a shadow among the wealthy guests who arrived from capital city, Stonebridge, or even from abroad, seeking the mystique of the ghost town transformed into a luxury retreat. "Never forget, Mijita," her mother would tell her as they folded sheets together in the linen room. "We don't exist for these people. We are the hands that clean their footprints, nothing more." April absorbed that lesson like one drinks salt water, necessary but bitter. And when Remedies was no longer there, when she disappeared one stormy night 12 years ago, leaving no trace but unanswered questions, April clung to that invisibility like a shield. The hotel was a 19th century construction restored with excessive luxury. High ceilings with dark wooden beams, wrought iron chandeliers, marble floors that reflected the blurred figures of those who walked upon them. The enormous windows overlooked the arid and majestic mountains surrounding the town, and on mornings like this, when the fog covered everything, the place seemed to float between two worlds. April entered the main lounge to begin her cleaning round. The antique mirror with its gilded frame, the same one she had cleaned every morning for 5 years, awaited her beside the cold fireplace. She approached with silent steps, as she had been taught, and began to polish the glass with circular, precise movements. In the reflection, she saw her own face, thin, with prominent cheekbones and honey-colored eyes that always seemed to be looking inward. Her black hair, waist-length, was tied back in a tight braid that made her head ache by the end of the day. She didn't hear when someone entered the lounge. She didn't feel the presence until, in the mirror's reflection, a masculine figure appeared standing by the windows, observing her. April froze. Her fingers clenched around the cleaning cloth. She knew that silhouette even though she had never seen it so close. Diego Montclair, the owner of all this, the heir to the most important hotel empire in the central region of the country. Diego was 38 years old and had a reputation that preceded him like a storm. They called him the ice magnate, not only for the coldness of his business decisions, but for the way he seemed to pierce people with his gaze without truly seeing them. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with a presence that occupied any space he was in, he always wore an immaculate dark suit. His black hair, slicked back, revealed a face with harsh features, a square jaw, eyes so dark they appeared black. He had inherited the business from his father, Sir Arthur Montclair, a man who built his fortune on silence and well-kept secrets. Diego hadn't been to Silverleaf Summit in years. His main headquarters was in St. Michael's Green, where he managed a chain of boutique hotels that attracted celebrities and millionaires from all over the world. But something had brought him back. April had heard the other employees whisper in the kitchen about problems, sabotage, millions in losses. The Silver Peak Lodge, the first hotel Sir Arthur built, the heart of the empire, was in crisis. In the mirror's reflection, April saw that Diego was watching her, not with the usual disinterest of wealthy guests, but with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She wanted to move, to continue her work, to disappear as she had been taught, but her legs wouldn't respond. The moment stretched like a spider's web between them, fragile and tense. Diego took a step forward. April lowered her gaze, fixing it on the marble floor. She heard his measured, deliberate steps approach. When he spoke, his voice was deep, with a timbre that vibrated in the cold morning air. "How long have you been working here?" The question caught her off guard. Bosses didn't ask questions. April swallowed before answering, keeping her eyes down. 5 years, sir. And before that? I grew up here. My mother worked at the hotel. A dense silence fell between them. April felt him waiting for her to continue, but she didn't know what else to say. She wasn't going to tell him about remedies, about how she disappeared without explanation, about how management told her mother simply left, abandoned her post and never returned. She wasn't going to tell him about the nights she spent as a child waiting by the window, believing she would see her mother walk up the cobblestone street. Diego moved until he was beside her. April could feel the warmth of his body, the intensity of his presence. He didn't touch her, but it was as if he did. The air between them vibrated with a strange electricity. "Look at me," he said. April hesitated. To look up at a boss was to break the unwritten rules that kept her safe, but something in Diego's voice, something deeper than an order, made her obey. She turned her head slowly, and her eyes met his for the first time without the mediation of the mirror. Diego's eyes were abysses, black, unfathomable, but there was something else there, something April couldn't name. Pain, fury, hunger. He looked at her as if he were trying to decipher a riddle, as if she were a piece that didn't fit into the puzzle in his head. "What's your name?" "April. April Moon." He repeated her name softly, as if testing it on his tongue. Then he nodded once, turned, and left the lounge without saying anything else. April remained motionless, her heart beating so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Something had changed, something had broken or been built in that brief exchange. She didn't know what, but she felt it in her bones. For the next few days, April did her best to avoid him. She changed her cleaning schedule, took alternate routes through the service corridors, and hid in the linen room when she heard his voice. But it was useless. Diego seemed to be everywhere. She saw him from a distance in the dining room, meeting with men in suits carrying briefcases and serious expressions. She heard him at night, walking through the corridors of the 3rd floor where the main suites were. Once, while taking clean laundry to the linen room, she ran into him on the stairs. Their gazes met for a second. Neither of them said anything, but April felt that second last an eternity. The other employees noticed the change. Lupe, the cook who knew remedies, asked her one afternoon while they were peeling potatoes in the kitchen. "What's wrong, mija? You look nervous." "Nothing," April lied. "I'm tired." Lupe looked at her with those wise eyes that saw too much. "Be careful, April. The Montclairs are not ordinary people. They have their secrets, their shadows. Your mother knew that. That's why she prayed to God that you would never get involved with them." "What do you mean?" Lupe shook her head as if regretting having spoken. "Nothing, child, just take care." But April couldn't let the conversation go. That night, when her shift ended, instead of going to her small room in the village, she went to the hotel library. It was a space guests rarely used, filled with old books and worn leather furniture. She knew they kept old hotel files there, employee records, historical documents. She searched for the record from the year her mother disappeared. It took her an hour to find it, hidden in a drawer of the main desk. She opened the dusty book and turned the pages with trembling fingers. She found her mother's name, Remedies Moon, chambermaid, start date, end date. But in the column for reason for leaving, where it should say resignation or dismissal, there was a single word handwritten in black ink: transferred. Transferred where? April felt a chill run down her spine. Her mother never told her anything about a transfer. She simply disappeared, and management told her she had left, nothing more. Why lie? Where was she transferred? She heard footsteps in the hallway. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly closed the book and put it back in the drawer. When she turned to leave, Diego Montclair was at the library door watching her. Diego closed the library door behind him with a soft click that echoed in the silence like a gunshot. April instinctively backed away until her back hit the desk. He advanced with slow, measured steps, like a predator in no hurry, because he knew his prey had no escape. "What are you looking for here?" he asked with that deep voice that seemed to fill every corner of the room. April opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. Lying would be useless. He had found her rummaging through hotel files. Telling the truth could cost her her job, the only thing she had. Diego stopped a meter away, close enough for her to see the small lines of tension around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. "I'm not going to ask you again." "My mother." April finally managed to say. "I was looking for information about my mother." Diego tilted his head, studying her. There was something in his gaze that April couldn't decipher, something between curiosity and recognition. "Remedy's Moon," he said. Not a question, but a confirmation. "She worked here 12 years ago." April nodded, surprised that he knew her mother's name. Diego moved towards the window, turning his back to her. The dim moonlight filtering through the clouds illuminated his profile, hard as if sculpted from stone. "What do you want to know?" "What happened to her?" April's voice trembled. "They told me she left, that she resigned, but they never explained why. And the records say she was transferred." "Where? Why did she never come back for me?" Diego remained silent for so long that April thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded distant, as if coming from far away. "There was an incident, a problem with one of the guests. Your mother saw something she shouldn't have seen. We moved her to another of our hotels for her safety." "Her safety? From what?" "From dangerous people. People she shouldn't have known." April felt the floor move beneath her feet. That didn't make sense. If they had transferred her mother to protect her, why did she never communicate? Why did she leave her alone as a child? "I don't believe you," she whispered. Diego turned to look at her. There was something new in his eyes, something that seemed like genuine pain. "I don't care if you believe me or not. It's the truth I can give you. And where is she now? Is she still working for you?" "I don't know." "You're lying." The word escaped her mouth before she could stop it. April expected fury, dismissal, retaliation. But Diego only smiled, a bitter, humorless smile. "You're brave. Or very foolish. Do you know what happens to people who speak to me like that?" "I don't care," April replied, and was surprised to find it was true. She no longer cared about invisibility, rules, fear. She needed answers. "She was my mother. I have a right to know what happened to her." Diego watched her in silence. Then, to her complete surprise, he nodded slowly. "You're right, but this isn't as simple as you think. There are things you're better off not knowing. Let me decide that." He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. April held her breath. Diego raised a hand and, with a gentleness that contradicted the hardness of his face, brushed away a strand of hair that had escaped her braid. His fingers grazed April's cheek, and she felt her skin burn where he touched her. "You're just like her," Diego murmured. "The same stubbornness, the same fire hidden beneath the calm." "Did you know her?" "Yes, and I know what it cost her." Before April could ask what he meant, Diego stepped back, breaking the moment. He put his hands in his pockets, and his expression returned to its usual cold mask. "Go. And don't go digging through files that don't concern you again." April left the library with trembling legs. When she reached her small room in the village, she collapsed onto the bed without even taking off her shoes. Her heart was pounding. Diego had touched her face. His fingers, warm and firm, had left an invisible mark that she could still feel. And he had said he knew her mother, that she was just like her. What did that mean? What had it cost Remedies? The following days were strange. Diego didn't seek her out directly again, but April always felt him near, like a shadow following her. She saw him in the hallways, in the dining room, in the garden, and every time their gazes met, there was a tension in the air that made it difficult to breathe. One afternoon, while changing sheets in one of the second-floor suites, she found a white envelope on the freshly made pillow. It had no name, just a seal with the Montclair family crest. April looked around to make sure she was alone, then opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was an old black-and-white photograph. It showed her mother, young, perhaps April's age now, standing in front of the hotel. But she wasn't alone. Beside her was an older man, distinguished, with the same aristocratic bearing as Diego. Sir Arthur Montclair, Diego's father, the founder of the empire. On the back of the photo was a single line written in blue ink. "Ask what you really want to know." April felt the world stop. What did that mean? Why was her mother in a photo with Sir Arthur? And who had left this for her? Diego? Or someone else? That night she couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, looking at the photograph again and again by candlelight. Her mother looked different in that picture, younger, more alive. She was smiling. April didn't remember ever seeing her smile like that. and the way Sir Arthur looked at her in the photo, there was something there, something that churned her stomach. The next day, she decided to confront Diego. She searched for him throughout the hotel until she finally found him in the back garden, the one overlooking the mountains. He was alone, smoking a cigarette as he gazed at the horizon. April approached with determined steps. "Was it you who left this?" She showed him the photograph. Diego didn't even seem surprised. He took the photo from her hands and studied it in silence. "No," he finally replied, "but I know who did." "Who?" "My cousin, Lawrence." April didn't know anyone by that name. Diego must have noticed her confusion because he continued speaking. "Lawrence Montclair, my father's younger brother's son. He works in hotel administration. He's very good at sticking his nose where it doesn't belong." "Why would he give me this?" "Because he wants to use you. Lawrence hates my family. He hates me. He's always believed we stole what was rightfully his. He's looking for a way to destroy me, and apparently he thinks you're a good tool." April felt a chill, but her eyes returned to the photograph, to her mother smiling beside Sir Arthur. "What was my mother's relationship with your father?" Diego looked at her intently. There was something fierce in his eyes, something that seemed like a warning and a challenge at the same time. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Yes, your mother was my father's mistress." The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread uncontrollably. April felt the air leave her lungs. She took a step back, then another. It couldn't be true. It couldn't. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice came out weak, without conviction. Diego took a step towards her, then another, until he was so close that April could see the golden flecks in his dark eyes. "I'm not lying. Your mother and my father had an affair that lasted years. He kept her here in this hotel, close. My mother knew, but she never said anything because that's how things work in families like ours. We keep secrets. We bury them deep. And me?" April's voice trembled. "Was Sir Arthur my father?" Diego watched her with an intensity that burned her. "It's possible." The revelation fell upon her like an avalanche. If Sir Arthur was her father, then Diego was her half-brother. And everything she had felt, that magnetic attraction, that electric tension between them, was something forbidden, something sick. April felt nauseous. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She turned and ran. She heard Diego call her but didn't stop. She ran through the garden, through the hallways, up the service stairs, until she reached the linen room and locked herself inside. She collapsed to the floor among the piles of clean white sheets, and for the first time in years, she cried. April spent 3 days avoiding Diego. She moved through the hotel like a ghost, arriving before dawn and leaving as soon as her shift ended. She ate alone in the kitchen when no one else was there, and if she heard his voice in a hallway, she took another route. But the revelation haunted her like a shadow. At night, she looked at her reflection in her small room's mirror and searched for traces of Sir Arthur in her features. Did she have his eyes, his nose, or was all this another lie in the tangle of secrets surrounding her mother? The storm arrived one night without warning. The wind howled through the cobblestone streets of Silverleaf Summit, rattling the hotel windows. April was finishing cleaning the top floor when the lights flickered and went out. Darkness enveloped her like a thick cloak. She fumbled her way towards the service stairs, but in the dark she became disoriented. She took a hallway she didn't recognize, with closed doors on both sides and thick carpet that muffled her footsteps. At the end of the corridor, a door was ajar. A faint light emanated from it. April approached cautiously. From inside came male voices, tense, arguing. She recognized Diego's voice immediately, but there was another she didn't know, sharper, with a mocking tone that made her skin crawl. "You can't keep hiding her forever, Diego. Sooner or later someone will discover the truth." "No one will discover anything," Diego replied with a clipped voice. "As long as I control this place, things stay as they are." "And what about the girl, Remedy's daughter? Are you going to control her too?" April froze. They were talking about her. "April is not your problem, Lawrence." "Lawrence." So that was the voice of Diego's cousin, the one who had left her the photograph. April moved closer to the door, trying to hear better. "Everything is my problem when it affects the family legacy. Do you know what would happen if the truth got out? The scandal would destroy everything Sir Arthur built. Then watch your tongue. It's not me who needs to be careful. It's you who's playing with fire. I saw how you look at her, cousin. It's just like with Elena. And we already know how that ended. Shut up. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Elena was untouchable too. She was your obsession too. And look where she is now. April felt the floor move beneath her feet. Elena. Who was Elena? Diego had told her he had no wife, that there was no one. Had he lied? A noise behind her made her spin around. One of the younger employees, Marisol, looked at her with wide eyes from the other end of the hallway. She had seen April listening. Before she could say anything, the door opened completely and Diego appeared in the doorway. His eyes fixed on April with a mixture of fury and something that looked like fear. "You," he said, in a dangerously low voice, "come here." April wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't respond. Diego took her arm, not violently but firmly, and pulled her into the room. It was a private office, with a dark wooden desk and shelves full of documents. At the other end, a man in his mid-30s watched her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lawrence Montclair was shorter than Diego, slender, with gelled brown hair and sharp features that gave him a foxy appearance. "So this is the famous April," Lawrence said in a syrupy tone. "The same black hair as Remedies, the same eyes. It's like seeing a ghost." "Get out of here, Lawrence," Diego ordered without letting go of April's arm. "Why so much secrecy, cousin? She has a right to know the truth. After all, she's family." "Lawrence, I'm warning you." Lawrence raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, but his smile widened. "As you wish. But remember, Diego, secrets always come to light, always." He left the office whistling an off-key tune. Diego locked the door and turned to April. There was something wild in his eyes, something she had never seen before. "How much did you hear?" "Enough. Who is Elena?" Diego ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it. For the first time since she had known him, he seemed vulnerable, almost human. "My wife." The word fell between them like a bomb. April backed away until her back hit the wall. "You're married?" "I was married. It's complicated." "Complicated? You said there was no one. You lied." "I didn't lie. Elena is no longer here." "Did she leave?" Diego looked at her with an expression April couldn't interpret. Pain, guilt, rage, all mixed in a whirlwind of emotions. "She's dead." The word hung in the air. April felt something break inside her, but she didn't know what. Diego approached slowly. "She died 12 years ago, here, in this hotel, the same day your mother disappeared." The world stopped. April opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Diego continued speaking, his voice barely a rough whisper. "Elena was fragile, mentally ill. She saw things that didn't exist, heard voices. My family wanted to institutionalize her, but I refused. I thought I could help her, that love would be enough. But it wasn't. One night, during a storm like this, she disappeared. They found her the next day at the bottom of the ravine, and your mother was the last person to see her alive." "No," April whispered. "No." "The investigators said Elena jumped, suicide. But your mother insisted she had seen something else, that someone else was there. No one believed her. And when she started asking questions, digging in places she shouldn't, she became dangerous." "What did they do to her?" "We protected her. We sent her away." "Where?" Diego looked at her intently. The distance between them was barely a meter, but it seemed like an abyss. "I don't know. My father took care of everything, and when I asked him, he told me it was better not to know. That way she would be safe." April felt tears burn her eyes. Her whole life had been a lie. Her mother didn't abandon her. She was taken away for discovering something about Elena, about her disappearance. "I hate you," she whispered. Diego closed his eyes as if the words were physical blows. "I know," but when April tried to pass him to reach the door, Diego stopped her. His hand closed around her wrist, warm and firm. April looked into his eyes, and what she saw there paralyzed her. Hunger, need, desperation. "Let me go. I can't." "Diego, please." He pulled her towards him with a sudden movement, feeling the warmth of his body through the fabric of his shirt. Diego's heart beat so strongly that she could feel it against her own skin. "Tell me you don't feel this. Diego whispered against her ear. "Tell me you don't feel this madness that has been driving me crazy from the first moment I saw you." April wanted to deny it, wanted to push him away, wanted to flee, but her body betrayed her. Every nerve ending was on fire, every breath was an effort. She looked up and met Diego's eyes so close she could see her own reflection in them. "This is wrong," she whispered. "I know. We might be siblings. I know. Then let me go." "I can't. And you don't want me to either." He was right. God help her, but he was right. April raised a trembling hand and placed it on Diego's chest, feeling the erratic beats of his heart. He closed his eyes, as if that simple touch was torture and relief at the same time. "Are you sure you want this?" Diego asked in a hoarse voice. April knew she should say no. She knew this was dangerous, wrong, perhaps even impossible, but she had spent her whole life being invisible, being nobody. And in this moment, in the arms of this complicated, broken man, she felt real for the first time. "I want to feel you," she whispered, and those words destroyed the last barriers between them. Diego kissed her with a ferocity that stole her breath. It wasn't a soft or tender kiss. It was pure hunger, desperation, need accumulated for too long. April responded with the same intensity, tangling her fingers in his hair, pulling him closer, even though there was no more space between their bodies. Diego lifted her effortlessly and sat her on the desk, stepping between her legs. His hands explored her waist, her hips as if memorizing every curve. April had never been touched like this, had never felt this fire consuming her from within. When Diego's lips moved to her neck, she let out a moan she didn't even know she was capable of producing. But then, as abruptly as it began, Diego pulled away. He took several steps back, breathing heavily, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "We can't do this," he said in a strained voice. "Not until we know the truth." April got off the desk on trembling legs. Her body still vibrated with the echo of the kiss, but her mind was beginning to clear. Diego was right. They needed to know the truth before crossing that line. But a part of her, the part that had awakened under his hands, didn't want to wait. "How will we know?" she asked in a hoarse voice. Diego ran both hands over his face, trying to regain control. "There are records, documents. Sir Arthur was meticulous with his affairs. If your mother was his mistress, if you are his daughter, there must be evidence somewhere." "Where?" "In his private office, in St. Michael's Green. No one has touched his things since he passed away 5 years ago." April processed the information. Sir Arthur had passed away, she knew that, but she never imagined that his secrets could still be hidden, waiting to be discovered. "Take me there," she said. Diego looked at her, surprised. "What? Take me to St. Michael's? Let me see those documents. I need to know who I am." "April, it's dangerous. If Lawrence finds out we're investigating, I don't care about Lawrence. I don't care about anything. I spent 23 years knowing nothing about my father, not understanding why my mother disappeared. I'm not going to spend another day in ignorance." Diego studied her in silence. Then, to April's surprise, he nodded slowly. "All right, we leave tomorrow at dawn. But this stays between us, no one can know." April nodded. Diego accompanied her through the dark hallways of the hotel to the service exit. Before she left, he took her hand. "April," he said in a low voice, "whatever happens, you need to know that what's between us isn't just physical attraction. There's something more, something I can't explain." She looked into his eyes and saw a vulnerability there that tightened her heart. "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too." That night, April didn't sleep. She packed her few belongings in a small suitcase, nervous and excited in equal measure. She was leaving Silverleaf Summit for the first time in years. She was going to see the world beyond the mountains, and she would do it with Diego, the man who was perhaps her brother, perhaps not, but who had definitely awakened something in her that she couldn't ignore. At dawn, Diego was waiting for her in a black car parked on the outskirts of the town. When April got in, he handed her a steaming cup of coffee. "It's a long drive," he said. 4 hours at least." As they drove along the winding roads that descended from the mountains, April watched the landscape gradually change. The arid mountains gave way to green valleys, small towns with colonial churches, cultivated fields. Diego played classical music, something soft that filled the comfortable silences between them. "Tell me about Eleanor," April said after a while. Diego gripped the steering wheel more tightly. What do you want to know? Everything, how you met, what she was like, what really happened. Diego sighed deeply. I met her at an art gallery in Capital City. She was a painter, talented, beautiful, full of life. We got married 6 months after meeting. I was 23, she was 25. I thought it was eternal love, the kind of love that lasts forever. What changed? Elena started having episodes. She saw things no one else saw. She heard conversations that didn't exist. At first I thought it was stress, that the pressure of marrying a Montclair was affecting her. But it got worse. There were nights when I found her talking to herself in the garden, saying someone was chasing her. The doctors said it was schizophrenia. They prescribed medication, but she refused to take it. She said the pills dulled her mind, that she couldn't paint when she took them. April listened in silence, watching Diego's profile as he drove. There was deep pain in his voice, wounds that had never healed. My family wanted to institutionalize her in a private facility. Sir Arthur said Elena was a danger to the family name, that her public episodes were damaging the business's reputation. But I refused. I loved her, April. Despite everything, I loved her, and I believed I could save her. And what happened that night? Diego was silent for so long that April thought he wouldn't answer. He finally spoke, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. There was a terrible storm. Eleanor had been worse that week, more paranoid, more frightened. She said someone in the hotel wanted to harm her, that she had discovered something terrible about the family. I thought they were hallucinations. That night we argued. I told her she needed professional help, that she couldn't continue like this. She cried, begged me to believe her, to protect her, but I didn't listen. I left her alone and went to an emergency meeting with the board. When I returned 3 hours later, she had disappeared. Did my mother see her leave? Yes. Remedies was doing the last round of cleaning. She said she saw Elena run towards the back garden, towards the ravine. She tried to follow her, but Elena was faster. When Remedies reached the edge, Elena was gone. She only heard the echo of her body falling. April felt a chill. The story was terrible, tragic. But something didn't fit. Why did my mother think there was someone else? Because Elena wasn't alone. Remedies swore she saw a shadow behind her, another person. But when the investigators arrived, they found no evidence of anyone else. They declared that Elena jumped of her own free will, case closed. But you don't believe that. I don't know what to believe. I've spent 12 years trying to forget that night, trying to move on. But there are days when I hear her voice, when I feel like she's telling me to help her, to find the truth. They arrived in Golden Valley at noon. The colonial city was beautiful, with its cobblestone streets, its brightly colored houses, its Baroque churches. So different from the austerity of Silverleaf Summit. Diego drove through the historic center until they reached a huge mansion hidden behind high walls, his family's house. Inside, the mansion was a museum of luxury, soaring ceilings with painted frescoes, antique furniture, works of art on every wall. An elderly maid greeted them with reverence. "Sir Diego, what a surprise to see you here." "Hello, Carmela. I need access to my father's office." The woman seemed uncomfortable. "But sir, you know that Sir Lawrence left specific orders that no one was to enter there without his authorization." "Lawrence doesn't give orders here," Diego replied with a clipped voice. "This is still my house. Open the office." Carmela nodded nervously and led them up marble stairs to the 3rd floor. At the end of a long hallway was a carved wooden door with the Montclair crest. The maid took out a bunch of old keys and opened the door. Sir Arthur's office was imposing. A mahogany desk, shelves full of leather-bound books, a stone fireplace, enormous windows overlooking the inner garden. It smelled of dust and stopped time. "Leave us alone," Diego ordered. "And Carmela, this is confidential." "Yes, sir." When the door closed, Diego and April looked at each other. Years of secrets were in this room, waiting to be discovered. "Where do we start?" April asked. "The personal files." Diego approached a locked cabinet. He forced the lock with a letter opener and opened the drawers. There were dozens of folders, meticulously organized. Diego began to review them one by one. April explored the rest of the office. There were photographs on the walls. Sir Arthur at different stages of his life, inaugurating hotels, receiving awards, with politicians and businessmen. In a corner was an oil portrait of a beautiful woman with blonde hair. The golden plaque on the frame read, "Isabella Montclair, devoted wife and mother." "Was this your mother?" April asked. Diego looked up from the file he was reading. "Yes, She died when I was 15. Cancer. I'm sorry. Diego returned to the documents. April continued exploring. On a side desk, she found a drawer that wasn't locked. Inside were old notebooks, Sir Arthur's personal diaries. She picked one at random and began to read. The entries were brief, mostly business notes, but as she turned the pages, she found something different. An entry dated 24 years ago. R arrived at the hotel today. She's different from the others. There's something in her eyes that disturbs me. An ancient sadness. I offered her permanent work. She accepted. R had to be remedies. April's heart beat faster as she continued reading. R and I started talking. She's intelligent more than she appears. She tells me stories of her life before coming here. She had a daughter 2 years ago. The father abandoned her. I promised to help her, to give her a better future. April felt her throat close. She continued reading with trembling hands. I can't stop thinking about R. This is madness. I'm a married man, but there's something about her that makes me feel alive again. The entries became more frequent, more intense. R and Isabella met today. My wife was kind, as always. She suspects nothing. But I know this cannot continue. Sooner or later, someone will notice. Diego, April called out, her voice trembling. I found something. He approached and read over her shoulder. His expression hardened. Keep reading. April turned the pages with trembling fingers as Diego read beside her. The diary entries became increasingly revealing, more intimate. R confessed today that she loves me. I told her I feel the same, but our love has no future. Isabella is ill. I cannot abandon her now. R cried. I promised her I would find a way to take care of her and her daughter always. Further on, another entry dated 22 years ago. Isabella passed away last night. The house is in mourning. Diego is devastated. Lawrence, my brother's son, came to offer his condolences. But I can see in his eyes that he is only waiting for his opportunity to claim what he believes belongs to him. Thar gave me comfort. She is the only one who understands my pain. April felt a mix of emotions. Her mother had loved Sir Arthur, that was clear. But there was something in these words that didn't sound like a simple romance. There was genuine affection, shared grief. She continued reading. An entry from 21 years ago made her stop dead. Today, R told me she is expecting a child. I wanted to believe it was mine, but the dates don't add up. She had mentioned another man, someone from the village, who visited her on her days off. When I asked her directly, she lowered her gaze. It's not mine, she said, but she wants the child to bear my surname, to have my protection. I told her I would think about it. April's world stopped. She read the entry again and again, as if the words would change with each reading. Sir Arthur knew he wasn't her father. He knew, and still helped remedies. So, who was her biological father? Diego read over her shoulder and cursed under his breath. Keep reading, he said urgently. April turned more pages. There was a gap of several months in the entries, and then a note dated shortly after her birth. R had a girl. She named her April, like the month we met. She's beautiful, with her mother's eyes. I promised I would take care of them. I gave her money so she could raise the child with dignity, but R refused. She said she only wanted honest work, that she didn't need charity. She's proud, like me. That's why I admire her. The entries continued, documenting the years that followed. Sir Arthur wrote about watching April grow from afar, about how remedies worked tirelessly to give her a good life. But there was something else between the lines, a growing tension. An entry from 12 years ago captured April's attention. R discovered something terrible. She confronted me today in my office, furious as I had never seen her. She said she found documents, evidence of what really happened to Elena Montclair. She accused me of being a monster, of protecting a murderer. I told her she didn't understand the situation, that things weren't as they seemed, but she didn't listen to me. She threatened to go to the authorities, to expose everything. I cannot allow it. For Diego's sake, for the family's sake, I must act. April stopped breathing. Her hands trembled so much she almost dropped the diary. Diego took it from her hands and continued reading aloud, his voice strained. I spoke with Dr. Meadows. He will take care of R. We will move her to one of our properties in Oak Ridge, where she will be safe but isolated. It is the only way to protect her and protect ourselves. April will remain under the hotel's care. I will make sure she has what she needs. Diego slammed the diary shut. His face was pale. Your mother is alive, he said. She has to be alive. My father wouldn't have ordered her disappearance otherwise. April couldn't speak. Everything she had believed for 12 years was a lie. Her mother didn't abandon her. She was torn from her side for discovering something about Elena, about her disappearance. What did she discover? She finally managed to ask. What evidence did she find about Elena? I don't know. But we need to find out. A voice from the doorway made them turn sharply. How touching. Cousin Diego playing detective with the maid's daughter. Lawrence was leaning against the doorframe with a smile that was pure malice. He wore an immaculate grey suit, his hair perfectly combed. In his hand, he held a glass of whiskey. Lawrence, Diego said in a dangerous voice, what are you doing here? This is my house as much as yours, cousin. Carmela told me you had arrived. Naturally, I became curious about what brought you back after so long. Lawrence entered the office with slow steps, studying April with calculating eyes. And you brought little April with you. Interesting. Have you told her the whole truth yet, Diego? Or are you still keeping secrets? Get out of here. Lawrence laughed, a humorless sound. Or what? Are you going to kick me out of my uncle's house? The man who practically raised me after my father drowned in debt because of your father's business dealings. Diego took a threatening step towards Lawrence, but April stopped him by placing a hand on his arm. What truth? She asked, looking directly at Lawrence. What hasn't he told me? Lawrence smiled widely. Oh, so many things. For example, that Elena Montclair isn't as disappeared as everyone thinks. April felt the floor move beneath her feet. Diego stiffened beside her. You don't know what you're talking about, Diego said in a deadly voice. Don't I? Lawrence took a sip of his whiskey. How curious, because I have records of monthly transfers to a private clinic in Golden Valley. Transfers that began exactly 12 years ago and continue to this day. Transfers authorized by you, cousin. Shut up. And the patient's name at that clinic is quite revealing. Elena Montclair of Montclair. Admitted with a diagnosis of severe psychiatric disorder. Under permanent care. April turned to Diego with wide eyes. He wasn't looking at her. His fists were clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. Is it true? April whispered. Is Eleanor alive? Diego closed his eyes. Yes. The revelation fell upon April like an avalanche. Elena hadn't jumped from the ravine. She hadn't disappeared. She was locked in a psychiatric clinic kept there by Diego for 12 years. You locked her up, April said, her voice trembling with fury and horror. You let everyone believe she was gone. Why? Because it was the only way to protect her, Diego replied in a strained voice. Elena didn't jump that night, April. They found her at the bottom of the ravine, but she wasn't like that. She survived, but her mind completely broke. The doctors said she would never recover, that she needed permanent care. My family wanted to declare her legally incapacitated and make her disappear. I made a deal. I would keep her in the best private clinic in the country, where she would be safe, but to the outside world, she would be lost. That way the family would avoid scandal, and Elena would have the attention she needed. Lawrence applauded slowly. How noble, cousin. You locked up your wife for over a decade to avoid a scandal, and then you come here, get involved with April, play the hero investigating the past. Have you already told her that the only reason she's alive is because your father decided not to eliminate her, as he did with her mother? Enough, Diego roared. He lunged at Lawrence, but his cousin was prepared. He agilely stepped back, leaving Diego to hit air. April saw the unleashed fury in Diego's eyes, the way his hands sought Lawrence's neck. Diego, no! April screamed. Don't do this. Diego stopped, breathing heavily. Lawrence calmly adjusted his suit with insulting composure. Control yourself, cousin. You wouldn't want April to see what you're really capable of. Get out, Diego said in a deadly voice, before I do something we both regret. Lawrence took a last sip of his whiskey and placed the empty glass on Sir Arthur's desk. As you wish. But April, dear, when you get tired of my cousin's lies, look for me. I have a lot to tell you about your mother, about where she really is, and about who your true father is. He left the office whistling the same off-key tune from the other night. April collapsed into a chair, her mind spinning uncontrollably. Elena was alive. Remedies was alive. Sir Arthur was not her father. And Diego had lied to her about so many things. April, Diego began approaching her. No, she said, raising a hand. Don't come closer. I can explain. Explain what? That you lied to me? That your wife is locked up in an asylum while you're here kissing me? That you knew all this time where my mother is but never told me? I didn't know where Remedies is. That's true. But you knew she was alive. You knew your father had moved her somewhere. Diego ran both hands through his hair, disheveling it. Yes, I knew, but I didn't know where. My father never told me, and when I asked him, he told me it was better that way, that Remedies was safe away from here. And Elena, when were you going to tell me about Elena? I don't know. Never. Always. It's complicated, April. Elena is my responsibility, my burden. But she's not my wife, not in the real sense. She doesn't recognize me. She doesn't recognize anyone. She lives in her own world, trapped in the night that fell. April stood up. She needed to move. She needed air. She walked to the window and looked at the garden below. The following days were tense. April stayed in the St. Michael's mansion, in a guest room far from Diego's. She needed space to think, to process everything she had discovered. Diego respected her distance, although April saw him walking the corridors at night, restless, like a caged animal. Lawrence, on the other hand, gave her no respite. He appeared at breakfast with kind smiles and light conversation. He offered to show her the city, introduce her to important people, treat her as if she were an honored guest and not the daughter of a disappeared employee. April mistrusted him, but she had to admit that Lawrence had a charm that Diego lacked. Where Diego was ice and silence, Lawrence was warmth and easy words. One afternoon, while April was reading in the library, Lawrence entered with 2 glasses of wine. "I thought you could use this," he said with a friendly smile, offering her a glass. April hesitated, but took the glass. Lawrence sat in the armchair opposite her, crossing his legs with casual elegance. "I know you distrust me," he began, "and I don't blame you. My entrance the other day was, shall we say, a little indelicate. But I want you to know that I am not your enemy, April." "No?" "No. In fact, I think you and I have more in common than you think." "And what would that be?" "We have both been victims of the Montclairs. You lost your mother because of this family's secrets. I lost my future." April took a sip of wine, watching him cautiously. "Your future?" Lawrence sighed dramatically. "My father, Robert Montclair, was Sir Arthur's younger brother. They had an agreement. They would both build the empire together, be equal partners. But Sir Arthur was ambitious. When the business began to grow, he started marginalizing my father, making decisions without consulting him. My father protested, threatened to sue him. A week later, his car went off the road on a dangerous curve. Accident, they said, but I know the truth." April felt a chill. "You think Sir Arthur had something to do with it?" "I don't think so. I know so. And Diego knows it too, although he'll never admit it. But that's how the Montclairs are, April. They protect their empire at any cost. Your mother discovered it. That's why they sent her away. My father threatened him. That's why he's no longer here. And now you're asking dangerous questions." "You're not scaring me," Lawrence smiled. "I don't want to scare you. I want to help you. I know where your mother is." The words hung in the air. April placed the wine glass on the table with trembling hands. "What did you say?" "Your mother. I know where they have her, and I can take you to her." "Why should I believe you?" "Because, unlike my cousin, I have nothing to gain by lying. Diego needs you confused. He needs you to depend on him for answers. I just want justice. I want the truth to come out and destroy the empire my uncle stole from my father." "Where is she?" Lawrence leaned forward, lowering his voice as if someone might overhear them. "There's a property in Oak Ridge, an old hacienda that the family uses as a private retreat, but it has a wing that functions as a sanatorium. It's where Sir Arthur sent people who knew too much. Your mother has been there for 12 years. April felt tears burn her eyes. 12 years. Her mother had been only a few hours away all this time, locked up like a prisoner. "Take me to her." Lawrence shook his head. "It's not that simple. The place is guarded. If we show up without a plan, they'll stop us. We need evidence first, something we can use to force Diego to let her go." "What kind of evidence?" Lawrence stood up and walked to the window. "Documents that prove Elena Montclair didn't disappear of her own free will, that she was illegally confined. Medical records, bank transfers, testimonies. With that, we can pressure Diego to release your mother too. Or better yet, we can go directly to the authorities and let them unravel this whole web of lies." April processed the information. It made sense, but something didn't feel right. Lawrence was too helpful, too convenient, and what do you gain from this? Revenge, Lawrence replied with brutal simplicity. I want to see Diego fall. I want him to pay for all his father's sins, and if that means helping you find your mother, I'll gladly do it. At least he was honest about his intentions. April appreciated that more than Diego's half-truths. Where are those documents? At the Golden Valley Clinic where they have Elena. We need to go there, get copies of her medical files, but we can't tell Diego. If he knows what we're planning, he'll stop us. April nodded slowly. She knew this was dangerous, that she was trusting the wrong man, but she also knew that Diego had lied to her too many times. She needed to take control of her own search. All right, I'll do it. Lawrence smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Excellent. We leave tomorrow at dawn. And April, one more thing. When we're in Golden Valley, there's someone else I want you to meet. Someone who can answer your questions about who your real father is. That night, April couldn't sleep. She walked through the mansion hallways, restless. She passed Diego's room and stopped. She could see light under the door. He was awake too. For a moment, she considered knocking, talking to him, asking him directly about the hacienda in Oak Ridge. But something stopped her. The lies had created a wall between them that seemed insurmountable. She continued walking until she reached the garden. The night was clear. The stars shone brightly. April sat on a stone bench beside a fountain and finally let the tears fall. She cried for her mother, for the lost years, for the innocence she could never reclaim. She cried for Diego and the impossibility of what she felt for him. And she cried for herself, for the girl who grew up alone without understanding why. She heard footsteps behind her but didn't turn. She knew by the sound, by the way the air changed, that it was Diego. He sat beside her in silence. For a long moment neither spoke. Only the sound of the fountain water filled the night. I know Lawrence is filling your head with stories, Diego finally said. I know you're planning to go to Golden Valley. April turned to him, surprised. How? Carmela told me. Lawrence asked her to prepare the car for early tomorrow. And I know you, April, I know you're desperate for answers. But you need to understand that Lawrence isn't doing this for you. He's using your pain to hurt me. Maybe. But at least he's willing to help me find my mother. You just give me excuses. Diego turned to look at her. There was deep pain in his eyes. If I knew where Remedies is, I would tell you. You have to believe me. Why should I believe anything you say? You lied to me about Elena. You let me believe she was lost when all this time you knew she was confined. Because I had to protect her, and protect my family from scandal. And what about me? Where do I fit into this whole protection equation? Or am I just another complication to manage? Diego took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. You're the only real thing that's happened to me in 12 years. You're the only person who makes me feel something other than guilt and emptiness. But you're right, I don't deserve your trust. Not after all the lies. April felt something break inside her. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to push him away. But her body reacted to his touch as always, with that fire she couldn't control. Let me go, she whispered without conviction. I can't. Diego brought his face close to hers. If you go with Lawrence tomorrow, if you discover what you think you're going to discover, maybe after that you'll hate me forever. But tonight, just for tonight, let me have you. April knew it was a mistake. She knew that in the morning she would regret it. But at that moment, under the stars, with a broken heart and a body hungry for something she had never experienced, she didn't care. Don't stop me this time, she whispered. Diego kissed her with desperation. It wasn't like that first kiss in the office. It was deeper, more intense, as if they both knew it might be their last. April responded with the same intensity, tangling her fingers in his hair, pulling him closer. Diego lifted her without breaking the kiss and carried her across the garden to a small, vine-covered gazebo. He gently placed her on a velvet settee and knelt before her. His eyes looked at her with a mixture of desire and adoration that stole her breath. I've never done this, April whispered. I know. Diego slid his hands up her legs slowly, reverently. And I swear I'm going to do it right. I'm going to make you feel everything you deserve to feel. April trembled as Diego began to kiss her, starting with her lips and moving down her neck, her collarbone, each kiss leaving an invisible mark of fire on her skin. His hands explored with infinite patience, as if he had all the time in the world. And April surrendered, letting the sensations consume her, forgetting for a moment all the lies and complications. April woke up before dawn in her own bed, not remembering how she had gotten there. Diego must have carried her after she fell asleep in his arms. Her body still vibrated with the memory of that night, of hands that discovered her with infinite patience, of kisses that ignited her in ways she never imagined possible. Diego had been gentle but passionate, careful but intense, and he had shown her a world of sensations that now terrified her as much as they fascinated her. But there was no time to reflect. Lawrence was waiting. April quickly dressed in simple clothes and went down the service stairs to avoid running into Diego. She didn't know what to say to him after the previous night. She didn't know if what they had shared changed anything or complicated everything even more. Lawrence was waiting by the car, dressed casually but elegantly as always. He smiled when he saw her approach. "I thought you wouldn't come. I thought my cousin would have convinced you to stay." April didn't answer. She got into the car without looking at him. Lawrence started the engine, and they drove in silence for the first hour. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. "Did you sleep well?" Lawrence asked in a casual tone that fooled no one. "Yes." "What a liar you are. I saw you leave the garden last night, with Diego." April felt the heat rise to her cheeks but kept her gaze fixed on the road. "That's not your problem." Lawrence laughed. "You're right. I just hope you know what you're getting into. Diego has a special ability to destroy the women he loves. Ask Elena." "Did he love her?" Lawrence shrugged. "In his twisted way, I suppose so. But it wasn't enough to save her, was it? His love led her to a ravine and then to a padded cell." April clenched her fists in her lap. She didn't want to defend Diego, but Lawrence's words sounded too cruel, too calculated. They arrived in Golden Valley when the sun was already high. The city was enormous, chaotic, so different from the tranquility of Silverleaf Summit. Lawrence drove confidently through congested streets until they reached an elegant residential neighborhood on the outskirts. He stopped in front of a discreet 3-story building surrounded by well-kept gardens. There were no signs, nothing to indicate it was a clinic. It looked like a large house, nothing more. "It's here," Lawrence said. "Hope Clinic. Ironic name, don't you think?" "How are we going to get in?" "I have a contact inside, a nurse who worked here when Elena was admitted. For the right price, she'll give us access to the files." April felt a knot in her stomach. All of this felt wrong, but she had come too far to turn back. She followed Lawrence to the side entrance of the building. A middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform was waiting for them, smoking a cigarette. "Lawrence," she said in a raspy voice, "you're late." "Traffic." Lawrence handed her a thick envelope. "Here's what we agreed on." The woman quickly counted the money and put it in her uniform pocket. "You have 15 minutes, round start after the morning shift." She led them down sterile hallways that smelled of disinfectant and something else, something April couldn't identify, but that churned her stomach. Desperation, perhaps. Concentrated sadness. They reached a small office full of filing cabinets. The nurse took out a bunch of keys and opened one of the drawers. "Montclair, Elena. Here it is." She pulled out a thick file and placed it on the desk. Lawrence began to photograph each page with his phone, while April read over his shoulder. The file was devastating. It described Eleanor as a patient with severe schizoaffective disorder, suicidal tendencies, frequent psychotic episodes. There were doctor's notes, nurses' reports, medication records, but what caught April's attention was a handwritten note in the margin of the first page. "Patient admitted without own consent. Family requests absolute confidentiality." "This is illegal," April whispered. "They have her here against her will." "Welcome to the Montclair world," Lawrence replied without stopping his photography. "Rules don't apply when you have enough money." They continued reading. There were psychiatric reports detailing Elena's delusions. She said her husband wanted her locked up, that she knew too much about the family's dirty business, that she had witnessed terrible things. The doctors categorized it all as paranoia. But April wondered, what if it wasn't paranoia? What if Elena really knew something? At the end of the file was a visitation section. Only one name appeared regularly, Diego Montclair. He came once a month without fail for 12 years. "He still visits her," April said softly. "Of course." Lawrence closed the file. He has to maintain control. Make sure she doesn't talk to anyone else. Can we see her? Lawrence looked at the nurse, who shook her head. Too much risk. If the other nurses see you, I'll be asked questions. But April wouldn't take no for an answer. She had come this far, she needed to see with her own eyes. Please, she said, looking at the nurse, just 1 minute, I need to know. The woman hesitated, then sighed. 1 minute, and if anyone asks, you were never here. She led them down another hallway to a locked door. She opened it slowly. Inside, the room was surprisingly cozy. Soft blue painted walls, light wood furniture, windows overlooking a garden. In a rocking chair by the window, a woman with tangled blonde hair looked out without truly seeing anything. Eleanor, the nurse said softly, you have a visitor. The woman didn't react. April approached slowly, studying her. Eleanor had once been beautiful, that was evident. But now her face was empty, her eyes lost somewhere far away. She wore a clean white gown, and her hands rested motionless in her lap. Hello, Elena, April said in a trembling voice. Elena turned her head slowly. Her pale blue eyes rested on April without recognition. Are you coming to get me? She asked in a childlike voice. Diego said he'd come soon. He said he'd take me home. April felt her throat close. This broken woman had been waiting 12 years for Diego to take her home. Elena, do you remember Remedies? Remedies Moon. She worked at the hotel. Elena's eyes focused for the first time. Something crossed her face, recognition. Fear. Remedies, she whispered. Remedies saw. She knows. What does she know? She knows I didn't jump. She knows he pushed me. April felt the floor move beneath her feet. Who pushed you, Elena? But the lucidity had already left Elena's eyes. She looked out the window again, humming a meaningless tune. We have to go, the nurse urged. Time's up. April wanted to stay, wanted to ask more questions, but Lawrence took her arm and led her out of the room. When they left the building and got to the car, April was trembling. She said someone pushed her, she said. Elena didn't jump. Someone pushed her into the ravine. Lawrence started the car with a somber expression. I know. That's why we need Remedies. She was a witness to what really happened that night. Take me to her, now. Lawrence shook his head. I can't. The hacienda in Oak Ridge is too heavily guarded. If we arrive unprepared without solid evidence, we'll only manage to get them both moved to a place where we'll never find them. We need a plan. Then make your plan, but I want to see my mother. You will. I promise you. But first, there's someone else you need to meet. Who? Your father. Your real father. Lawrence drove to a modest neighborhood on the other side of the city. He stopped in front of a small house with an unkempt garden. A man in his 50s came out onto the porch when he saw them arrive. He was of medium build with graying hair, a face marked by years of work under the sun. April, Lawrence said, I'd like to introduce you to Raphael Meadows, your father. April looked at the man uncomprehendingly. Raphael approached slowly, his eyes full of tears. You're just like your mother, he said in a broken voice. I've waited years to meet you. April stepped back, confused. I don't understand. Who are you? I was a gardener at the Silver Peak Lodge 24 years ago. That's where I met Remedies. We fell in love. When she got pregnant, I wanted to marry her, give our daughter my name. But Sir Arthur intervened. He fired me. He threatened me. He said if I didn't disappear, he would destroy me. I was young, scared. So I ran away. I've lived with that guilt ever since. April felt the world spin. This man, this stranger, was her father. Why should I believe you? Raphael reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a young man beside Remedies. Both were smiling. They were clearly in love. We took this 2 months before you were born, Raphael said. Remedies sent me a letter when you were born. She told me she named you April. I wanted to come back, but Sir Arthur found me. They beat me, left me in the hospital for weeks. The message was clear: stay away or next time you'll disappear completely. April took the photograph with trembling hands. Remedies looked so young, so happy, so different from the serious, quiet woman she remembered. And now, why are you appearing now? Lawrence found me. He told me you were looking for answers. He wanted you to know the truth, that you're not a Montclair, that you have family outside that empire of lies. April spent the afternoon with Raphael, listening to stories about her mother she had never heard. Remedies the dreamer, the one who believed in true love. Remedies the brave, who confronted Sir Arthur to protect her family. Raphael spoke with tears in his eyes, sharing memories they had kept for over 2 decades. But as she listened, April couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't quite fit. The stories were beautiful, but too perfect. Raphael was warm and kind, but there was something in his eyes when he spoke of the Montclairs that seemed more rehearsed than genuine. When Lawrence drove her back to St. Michael's, it was already night. During the drive, April processed everything she had discovered. Elena alive but broken, Raphael, a father who appeared out of nowhere, and her mother, supposedly confined in some hacienda in Oakridge. "Thank you," she told Lawrence when they stopped in front of the mansion, "for showing me the truth." Lawrence smiled. "Don't thank me yet, this is just beginning. Now that you know you're not a Montclair, that there are no blood ties between you and Diego, what are you going to do?" The question left her speechless. He was right. If Raphael was her father, then there was nothing forbidden in what she felt for Diego, but that didn't erase the lies, the pain, the betrayal. "I don't know," she admitted. "Think carefully, April. Diego has lied to you from the beginning. He has used you. But you can get revenge. You can help me expose everything, destroy the empire he cares so much about. With the evidence we have, we can go to the authorities, free Elena, find your mother. We can make him pay." April got out of the car without answering. She entered the mansion through the main door, emotionally and physically exhausted. Carmela was in the reception area, waiting for her with a worried expression. "Miss April, Sir Diego has been looking for you all day. He's in his study." April nodded and went upstairs. She needed to talk to Diego. She needed to confront him with everything she had discovered. She found his study on the 2nd floor, the door ajar. Before knocking, she heard voices inside. Diego was on the phone, his voice tense. "I don't care what it costs. Find Remedy's Moon and bring her here." "Yes, I know she's been at the Oakridge Hacienda. No, don't tell anyone else about this, especially Lawrence." April pushed the door open. Diego looked up, surprised. He abruptly ended the call. "April." "You knew where my mother was," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "All this time you knew." Diego stood up, circling the desk. "I just found out. Lawrence left clues in my father's files. He was waiting for me to find them. It's part of his game. And I'm supposed to believe you? I went to Golden Valley today. I saw Elena." Diego froze. "What?" "I went with Lawrence. We saw her medical file, and I spoke to her. She told me someone pushed her that night. That she didn't jump." Diego closed his eyes, as if hearing those words caused him pain. "Elena is ill, April. Her mind confuses memories with hallucinations. You can't believe everything she says. Or maybe she's the only one telling the truth. Maybe you all locked her up because she knew too much. Do you think I pushed her?" Diego's voice sounded broken. "Do you think I'm capable of that? I don't know what you're capable of. I don't know anything anymore." Diego approached her, but April backed away. "I also met my father today, Raphael Meadows. He told me everything about his relationship with my mother, about how Sir Arthur threatened him and drove him away." Diego frowned. "Raphael Meadows? A gardener who worked at the hotel over 20 years ago?" "Yes." "April, that doesn't make sense. Employee records show that Raphael Meadows worked at the hotel for only 6 months. He left 3 years before you were born. You're lying." "I'm not lying, and I can prove it to you." Diego went to a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder. He opened it and showed her old payroll documents. There was the name, Raphael Meadows, date of hire, date of termination, 3 years before April's birth. "No," April whispered. "It can't be. Lawrence is manipulating you. He found someone, probably paid him to impersonate your father. He wants you to think there are no blood ties between us so you'll trust him, so you'll help him destroy me. And why should I believe you instead of him? Because I've never lied to you about what I feel. Because what's between us is real, and Lawrence knows it. That's why he wants to destroy it." April collapsed into a chair, her mind spinning. Who was telling the truth? Who was lying? She couldn't tell anymore. Diego knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I should have told you about Eleanor from the beginning. But April, you have to believe me when I tell you I'm doing everything I can to find your mother. And when I find her, I'll bring her to you, I promise you. What if Sir Arthur was my father? What if Raphael is just another liar, but the truth is we're siblings?" Diego squeezed her hands. "Then we'll do a test. A DNA test. We'll solve this once and for all. April looked into his eyes. She saw desperation, fear, but also something that looked like true love. "All right," she whispered. "Do it." That night, April couldn't sleep again. She walked through the hallways when she heard voices downstairs. She approached carefully and recognized Diego's and Lawrence's voices, arguing in the library. "You have no right to interfere in this," Diego said in a controlled but furious voice. "I have every right. This family owes me everything they took from me. My father had nothing to do with your father's situation." "No?" Lawrence laughed bitterly. "Your father systematically destroyed my father. He left him ruined, desperate. And when my father threatened to expose the family's dirty business, he ended up at the bottom of a ravine, just like Elena. You're implying my father was a murderer. I'm not implying it, I'm stating it, and you know it. That's why you covered up Elena's situation, because you knew that if it was investigated thoroughly, all the family skeletons would come out of the closet." April held her breath. Was it possible? Had Sir Arthur ordered those losses? "Get out of my house, Lawrence," Diego said in a deadly voice. "This house is as much mine as yours, and I won't leave until April knows the whole truth, including the fact that Sir Arthur is her father. I already have the evidence. I found the results of the paternity test he himself ordered 23 years ago." April felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. She pushed open the library door and entered. Both men turned to her. "What test?" she asked in a trembling voice. Lawrence pulled an envelope from his jacket with a triumphant smile. "This, a paternity test that Sir Arthur ordered when you were born. The results are conclusive. He is your father, April, which means you and Diego are half-siblings. Everything that has happened between you is an abomination." Diego lunged at Lawrence, but April screamed, "Stop!" Both stopped. April took the envelope from Lawrence's hands with trembling fingers. She opened it and read the document. It was official, from a recognized laboratory. The results showed a 99.9% probability of paternity between Sir Arthur Montclair and April Moon. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She collapsed to the floor, the document slipping from her hands. Diego approached, but she pushed him away with a violent gesture. "Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. April, that document could be fake." Lawrence laughed. "Fake? It's from the same laboratory they used for Diego's test when he was born. It's signed by Dr. Meadows, the family's trusted physician." April staggered to her feet. She looked at Diego with eyes full of tears and horror. "All this time, everything we did, we're siblings." She ran out of the library, away from both men, away from the truth that was destroying her. She went up to her room and locked the door. She collapsed onto the bed and cried until no more tears remained. Hours later, when the house was silent, April heard a soft knock on her door. "Go away," she said without opening. "It's Carmela, miss. I have something important to tell you." April opened the door. The elderly maid looked at her with a serious expression. "I heard what happened downstairs, and there's something you need to know. That document Sir Lawrence showed you, I saw it the day it was ordered, and I also saw Sir Arthur destroy it." "What?" "Sir Arthur ordered the test, yes, but when the results arrived, he tore them up. He said it didn't matter what they said, that April was Raphael's daughter, period. How is it possible that Lawrence has a copy if Sir Arthur destroyed them?" April felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. "Are you sure?" "Completely. Sir Lawrence is lying. I don't know how he got that document or if he forged it, but Sir Arthur never knew those results. He burned them without reading them." Before April could respond, a crash shook the house. Screams came from downstairs. April and Carmela ran down the stairs. Diego was in the reception area with the phone in his hand, pale as a ghost. "What happened?" April asked. Diego looked at her with eyes full of terror. "Elena escaped from the clinic, and she's coming here." The storm approaching St. Michael's Green that night seemed to foreshadow the chaos about to unfold. April, Diego, and Carmela waited in the reception area when car lights illuminated the entrance. But it wasn't Elena who got out of the vehicle. It was a woman with black hair, barely touched by a few gray strands, with honey-colored eyes identical to April's. "Remedy's Moon, Mom," April whispered, unable to believe it. Remedy's ran to her and enveloped her in an embrace that lasted an eternity. Both cried, clinging to each other as if afraid this moment was just a dream. "My child, my April," Remedy sobbed. I thought I'd never see you again. How? How did you get here? Elena helped me escape from the hacienda. She arrived 2 days ago, delirious but determined. She told me I had to come back, that I had to tell the truth before Lawrence destroyed everything. Diego approached cautiously. Where is Elena now? As if summoned, another figure appeared at the door. Elena Montclair looked gaunt, her clothes wrinkled, her hair disheveled. But her eyes, for the first time in 12 years, were completely lucid. Hello, Diego, she said in a calm voice. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. Diego stood motionless, as if seeing his wife sane after so many years had paralyzed him. Eleanor, he began, but she raised a hand. I need to say this before Lawrence arrives, because he will come. He knows I escaped and he knows what I'm going to reveal. Remedies led Elena to the living room. Everyone sat down, the tension palpable. Eleanor took a deep breath before speaking. That night, 12 years ago, I didn't jump from the ravine, and I wasn't pushed by accident either. Lawrence deliberately pushed me because I discovered his plan. What plan? Diego asked in a strained voice. Eleanor looked at April before continuing. Lawrence and Sir Arthur never got along. When Sir Arthur's brother had his accident, Lawrence became convinced it was planned. He spent years gathering evidence, trying to prove that Sir Arthur had orchestrated everything, and he finally found something. Documents that showed Sir Arthur had sabotaged his brother's car brakes. Diego turned pale. That can't be true. It is, Remedies intervened in a soft but firm voice. I discovered it too. Sir Arthur confessed it to me one night, tormented by guilt. He told me his brother was going to divide the empire, sell his share to competitors. Sir Arthur couldn't allow it, so he took measures. But he never imagined the consequences would haunt him forever. Eleanor continued. Lawrence found those documents in Sir Arthur's office, but instead of going to the authorities, he decided to use them for revenge. His plan was to destroy the empire from within. He began to sabotage businesses, create losses, manipulate situations. I discovered it by accident. I saw documents in his room that I shouldn't have seen. When I confronted him, he panicked. That stormy night, he followed me into the garden. We argued, and when I got too close to the edge of the ravine, he pushed me. But you survived, April said. Yes, I fell onto some bushes that cushioned my fall. But my mind broke with the impact, with the trauma. When they found me, I couldn't speak coherently, and Lawrence made sure the doctors diagnosed me as schizophrenic. He convinced Sir Arthur that I was a danger, that my accusations were delusions. Diego agreed to institutionalize me to protect me, without knowing that by doing so he was helping Lawrence hide his crime. Diego buried his face in his hands. My God. All this time. Remedies spoke. I saw what happened that night. I saw Lawrence push Elena. I tried to help her, but when I went down to the ravine, Lawrence was already there. He threatened me. He said that if I spoke, April would suffer the consequences. The next day I told Sir Arthur everything, hoping he would believe me, that he would do justice. But Sir Arthur was tormented by his own guilt. He feared that if it was investigated too deeply, his own secrets would come to light. So he sent me away to the hacienda in Oak Ridge, supposedly for my protection, but in reality it was to silence me. So that paternity test, April began. It's fake, Remedies confirmed. Sir Arthur was never your father, Mijita, nor was Raphael Meadows, that man Lawrence introduced you to. Your father was a good man who worked briefly at the hotel, a musician passing through the town. His name was Thomas King. We loved each other for a summer, but he had to go his way. When I found out I was pregnant, he was already gone. Sir Arthur offered me help, it's true, but we were never lovers. He loved me from afar, with an impossible love that was never consummated. That's all. April felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders. She was not Diego's sister. There was nothing forbidden in what she felt for him. Lawrence falsified everything, Diego said, understanding. The paternity test, the story of Raphael Meadows, all to separate us, to manipulate you against me. Exactly, Elena confirmed. Lawrence needed April to help him destroy you, Diego. He knew that if she believed she was your sister, she would hate you, and with your fall he would finally inherit the empire he believes belongs to him. As if summoned, the main door burst open. Lawrence entered with a distraught expression. He no longer wore the mask of charm. His face showed pure fury. What a touching reunion, he said with sarcasm. The madwoman who returned from the lost, the rescued maid, the repentant magnate, and the confused bastard. "Lawrence," Diego said, standing up, "it's over. Elena and Remedies are going to testify about what you did." Lawrence laughed, but it was a demented sound. "Testify? Who's going to believe them?" "Elena is a psychiatric patient with 12 years of history of delusions. Remedies was declared missing years ago. Their testimonies are worthless." He pulled a gun from his jacket. Everyone froze. "But it doesn't matter, because tonight all of you are going to have a terrible accident, a fire perhaps. These old houses are so prone to tragedies." April stepped forward, putting herself between Lawrence and Diego. "You're not going to hurt anyone else." Lawrence pointed the gun at her. "Get out of the way, April. I don't want to hurt you. We can still fix this. We can be together, you and I, destroy the Montclairs and build something new." "You're crazy." "I'm not crazy," Lawrence screamed. "I'm doing justice. My father deserves justice." "Your father had a terrible accident," Remedies said in a firm voice. "But Lawrence, continuing this cycle of revenge won't bring him back. It will only create more pain." Before Lawrence could respond, Carmela appeared behind him with a heavy bronze statue. She slammed it against his head. Lawrence fell to the floor, unconscious. The gun flew from his hand. Diego quickly picked it up while Carmela dusted off her hands. 40 years working in this house. I've seen enough drama for a lifetime." The authorities were called. When the police arrived, Elena and Remedies gave their full testimonies. Lawrence was arrested for attempted assault, and the investigations into the events of 12 years ago were officially reopened. The following days were a whirlwind of interviews, statements, and public revelations. The scandal shook the Montclair empire to its foundations. But Diego faced everything with renewed dignity. He publicly admitted his father's mistakes, established a compensation fund for families affected by questionable practices of the past, and began to completely restructure the business. Elena was officially discharged from the clinic after evaluations confirmed her mental recovery. She decided to move to Europe, start anew, paint again. She said goodbye to Diego with a hug and words of forgiveness that freed them both. A month later, April and Diego were in Silverleaf Summit at the Silver Peak Lodge. But now they arrived as equals. Remedies worked there again, but this time as manager, not as a chambermaid. She had forgiven Sir Arthur in his memory, understanding that he too had been a victim of his own decisions. Diego and April walked through the back garden, the same place where everything had begun to unravel 12 years ago. Now it was full of new flowers, of renewed life. "Are you sure you want this?" Diego asked, taking April's hands in his. "A life with me won't be easy. There's still much to repair, much darkness to clear." April smiled, that smile she had discovered at some point during this chaotic journey. "I want to feel you," she replied, using the same words from that first night, but this time without fear, without secrets. Diego kissed her with the tenderness of someone who has finally found peace, and this time when they separated, April noticed something different in his eyes. They were no longer abysses of ice. They were warm, alive, full of promises. From a hotel window, Remedies watched her daughter with tears of happiness. She had lost 12 years, it was true, but now she had the rest of her life to make up for lost time. The storm had passed, and after so much darkness there was finally light. Diego knelt before April, this time not in surrender but in proposal. From his pocket, he took out an old, delicate ring. "Are you sure you want this?" he asked, with a smile that completely transformed his face. April knelt too, meeting his gaze, and took his face in her hands. "I want to feel you," she whispered, "now and always, with all my heart." And as they kissed under the clear sky of Silverleaf Summit, Remedies closed the window with a smile. Her daughter had finally ceased to be invisible. She finally existed, completely and truly, for someone. And that someone, despite everything, was exactly who he was meant to be.